The election and the future of Christianity. While I am not a political commentator and I tend to keep, my private views private, I am a religious commentator and religion certainly played a role in this election and we have to talk about that. So, hi, my name is Britt Hartley. I'm an atheist spiritual director with a master's degree in theology, and the focus in my program was the future of American religion. So, today we'll be discussing how religion played a role in this election and how each religion kind of voted, and then what this means specifically for the future of Christianity. So, as everybody knows, white evangelical Christians overwhelmingly supported Donald Trump with over 80% voting for him. And this group is really the cornerstone of the Republican base, driven by issues like abortion and religious freedom. And by the way, we don't need to say throughout this video, like, not all men or not all Christians. We're talking in generalizations here. So that's already implied. I already know not all Christians, but for the most part, yes, Christians overwhelmingly voted for Trump. Approximately 60% of white Catholics voted for Trump, continuing a trend of Republican alignment among this group. But Hispanic Catholics were more divided, with about 52% supporting Trump and the rest leaning towards Kamala, reflecting some broader shifts in Latino political preferences. Black Protestant voters strongly supported Kamala, with 87% voting Democratic. This group has traditionally been a very reliable Democratic bloc, motivated by issues like racial justice and economic equality. So, Black Protestant churches are historically different, even theologically, from the rest of especially white Christianity in America. So, while white Protestant churches were talking about building empires and building the kingdom of God, Black churches, particularly in the South, really gravitated towards liberation theology, or this idea that Jesus would come someday and the last shall be first and the first shall be last, for obvious reasons. So when it comes to inequalities, they typically see the blue ticket as more likely to support those goals. So American Jews largely supported Kamala Harris, with nearly 80% voting for her. Orthodox Jews, however, leaned heavily Republican, with about 74% voting for Trump. So this is a difference in the Jewish community, depending on whether the theology is more liberal or more orthodox. And we see that with religions across the board. So the religiously unaffiliated, who now make up a significant portion of the electorate, voted overwhelmingly for Harris, above 70%. This group has consistently aligned with Democrats due to their focus on secular governments and social liberalism, and then also a lot of anyone but Trump. So, voters from non Christian religions, such as Muslims, Buddhists, Hindus, primarily supported Harris, although Trump did gain some modest traction, receiving about 34% of their votes. Issues like immigration came up for non Christian religious voters, and the need for a powerful figure to take control of what feels like a country in chaos. Mormons overwhelmingly voted for Trump. Idaho and Utah. I live in Idaho, will always be a red state, but a few percentage points less this time than last time that Trump ran. And so there is a small minority of Mormon women voting from within Mormonism, but overall, Utah and Idaho always going to be red states. White Christian men, especially evangelical Protestant men, were Donald Trump's strongest supporters, so above 85% for white evangelical men, driven by issues like abortion, again, religious freedom, but also the traditionalist views on family and gender roles. So white men may not say this, anyone may not say this, but we know that political decisions are not entirely rational for everyone. They are emotional first. When you ask people blindly, for example, when you ask people who voted for Trump to look at the policy plan, the economic policy plan of Trump and Harris without knowing who was who, many Trump voters picked Kamala's plan. But when they were asked why they voted for Trump, they would say, oh, just his economic policies. So we know, not just for conservatives, but everyone, your political stance is an emotional stance based on your political values and your hierarchy of values, your core values, much more than it is about pure logic and reason. We add those reasons second. So when we look at the emotional reasons of why especially Christian men are voting for Trump in such large numbers, we see that the emotional root is often that the Democratic Party is coming off as anti-male, whereas the Republican Party is very pro-male and pro-patriarchy and pro-Christianity. And so if the only thing that the Democratic Party has to offer men is shame, like if you go on their website and they list all the groups that they stand for, and it's basically everyone except men, everything except for the male mental health crisis, where it's totally silent. Whereas Trump comes in with all these other alpha males and not only says you're great, but let's make America great again, where being a man was great and you were afforded certain liberties and powers and head of household and go back to church where your masculinity is valued. There's a feeling of white Christian men, specifically in our country, feeling threatened in their value in modern society and flocking to patriarchal religion and Andrew Tate's and Trump's and anyone that helps them feel that they have value.
Aspirational, feeling good about being a man, believing you are entitled to more economic opportunity than is currently presented. Look, you referenced this, so I feel like most of the stats I was going to discuss, you've already kind of stolen my thunder, but essentially this was supposed to be the election, the referendum on bodily autonomy. This was the testosterone election. Look at who Trump went on, look at who and what he went all in on. Crypto, Elon Musk, rockets, cars. You talked about podcasts. There's a difference between being right and being effective. Whether we can discuss whether his policies are right or not, but gosh, talk about effective. That number you mentioned, a total of 55 million people listen to or watch the Rogan podcast. The average age is 34, skews male. Just to talk about broadcast television, some of the best shows on MSNBC, seen as a left kind of leaning network, get 1 million viewers and the average age is 70 and it skews female. So what would be more effective? 1 million 70-year-old women or 55 million 34-year-old men in your state, the swingiest of swing states? Young men were 9 points towards Biden in 2020 and then 18 points toward Trump in 24. That's a tectonic shift. And it all comes down, in my opinion, to the same thing. A 30-year-old man or woman isn't doing as well as his or her parents were at 30 for the first time in America's history. And if your son isn't in a relationship, can't afford to buy a home, is anxious, is depressed, are the rights of Palestinians, territorial sovereignty of Ukraine, or trans rights, does that even register on your screen? This was the testosterone podcast election.
So there's certainly an emotional aspect there, whether or not people are aware of it, because don't tell me that like this is the best of what Christianity has to offer. Like when Trump can't name one scripture, but he holds out a Bible for a picture, or when he says, I can't choose between the Old and New Testament because they're both my favorite. Don't tell me this is about Christian values. Don't tell me this is about family values, like with his record. Like you cannot say that with a straight face. This is much more of an emotional vote. All right, so white Christian women, however, were a little more split because on the one hand, white women, including myself from time to time, have historically sold their power for proximity to power. That is the problem of white women in America. If you want to talk about how white women are the problem, that's the problem. And so we did that historically with race, and we're seeing that happen with Trump. So to get a woman to say, not only do I vote for Trump, but my daughters proudly wear Trump t-shirts and I would support my daughters in being, Trump's secretary, like that takes religion. Like it takes religion to get that kind of cognitive dissonance. And so Christian women really focusing on abortion, feeling like Trump would protect their religious freedom and the value that they have as Christian women in society, which is being attacked particularly by other women. But it does take more cognitive dissonance to do so, which is why more Christian women voted for Kamala than Christian men. All right, evangelical women, about 75%, voted for Trump, slightly lower than their male counterparts. While they share concerns about abortion and religious freedom, there is tension there when it comes to gender equality and just Trump's rhetoric and history with women. So it takes more cognitive dissonance there. Catholic women, white Catholic women were more evenly split, with about 50% supporting each candidate. And this reflects a broader trend of Catholic women showing openness to democratic policies on healthcare, education, and economic security. So, men just overall more likely to align with conservatism and the Republican Party, focusing on issues like economic policy and religious liberties, and also gender issues. Whereas women, even within conservative religious traditions, are more influenced by concerns over healthcare, education, social equity, leading to greater diversity in their voting patterns compared to men. And so when we take a step back, we're seeing the overlap between religious conservatism and political authoritarianism. So perhaps there was a time that the Republicans Party stood for smaller government, but a character like Trump is authoritarian. He openly idolizes authoritarians and makes everything about his image and his loyalty to him. So if you are a religion that values authority and hierarchy, then Trump is going to appeal to you. If your religion values patriarchy and traditional gender roles, and Trump's out there saying, I've never changed a diaper, Trump is going to appeal to you. And religion also provides frameworks for cognitive dissonance, such as religious reasons why God uses imperfect people to bring about his will. Or I'm seeing a lot of content on King David and how he was an imperfect king who was used by God too. So religion really primes the brain for us versus them thinking, also conspiracy thinking. Every Democrat running for president in my lifetime has been called the Antichrist, for example. So religion is doing a lot here. It has ways for working with cognitive dissonance. It really ramps up the us versus them. It's making this into a spiritual battle and spiritual warfare. It primes you to value authority and hierarchy and patriarchy. And power. And if you're in an Abrahamic religion with a celestial dictator as your God, you'll have no problem choosing someone like Trump to represent your religious interests. Like if God can demand loyalty and be narcissistic and throw tantrums and encourage violence and throw people in hell, then it shouldn't surprise us. Like if that's what you worship in your God, then it shouldn't surprise us that people would have no problem choosing political leaders who also act like the narcissist that the God of the Bible is. So, what does this mean now for the future of Christianity in America? So, three options all happening simultaneously for the future. Number one, the most optimistic one, this could be a kind of wake up call for Christianity for how much it has gotten into bed with politics. So, Christianity could thrive if it reclaims its message of hope and service and moral consistency. So, historical patterns suggest that authentic spirituality often emerges when there's an institutional crisis, especially if leaders embrace humility and or repentance. So Martin Luther's 95 Theses, nailed to the door of the church in 1517, was a direct response to the corruption of the Catholic Church, particularly in the selling of indulgences, because it was just so obvious that it was corrupt. And his actions sparked this seismic shift as many believers rejected the institutional church, but still wanted to retain their Christian faith. And then it moved into a whole new direction of, Lutheranism and Protestantism, where it was still Christianity, but it was a rejection of the Catholic institutional church. So there could be a kind of revival of, hey guys, what really is Christianity about, going on in churches and pulling back from the political inroads that has made it so that its credibility is threatened as a moral institution. So there could be genuine revival of threads of Christianity that we aren't seeing right now because they're so overshadowed by fundamentalism and political corruption. So I've seen this with the uprising of the concept, I'm a follower of Christ. If you really listen and pay attention, there's this group saying, I'm Christian and I love Trump. and all of the things. And then there's this quieter group saying, I'm concerned with some of the stuff is going on, and I'm a follower of Christ. And the followers of Christ are, at least in the ways that I'm seeing this phrase used, are people who really wake up each day and say, how can I love more like Jesus loved, in this expansive way that challenged societal norms? Like I love that kind of Jesus. These Christians are less loyal to institutions because Jesus flipped tables of the institution in his day too. And I really have no problem with this group of Christians. They find Jesus, they find in Jesus a sense of the sacred, and they find in him a mystic teacher that can bear good fruit and lead towards really loving, meaningful lives that I can recognize even as an atheist. The question is this group growing as more people are turned off by the cognitive dissonance of defending Trump and ignoring the Jesus of the Bible, or is this group declining? So that's the question to watch with that option. That's option number one, a Christian revival with Christians calling themselves followers of Christ to differentiate, political Christians that are part of this political machine. Now, option number two, this could be solidifying Christianity in America as a political religion rather than a theological one. I saw this happen in Mormonism when COVID came out. So Mormons have doctrine that the prophet is, the leader and receives revelation directly from God. And the entire church praised this miracle that in these times the current prophet has experience in medicine, because it's like, yay, he's bridging the gap between science and religion. It's just what we need. And then when COVID came out, the prophet said, wear masks, get vaccinated, because it's what Jesus would do. We should do things that benefit others, especially the most vulnerable. And essentially, the entire church said, "No, thanks. You're just talking as a man. That's not, I'm not accepting that revelation." So when it came between following the prophet that they've praised and theology, the theology, and their political views, which were very, anti-vax and anti-mask politically, they chose that their political views trumped, what they believed that their religious doctrine was. And so to me, this demonstrated that when push comes to shove, political identity is holding more sway than their theological teachings. And this, this is just a tiny example, but it could be what's happening in broader Christianity if it continues down the road of being a political power more than a religion. So in this scenario, Christianity might become less about faith or theology or moral guidance and more about reinforcing cultural and political identities. That may be its purpose now. The result could be just a significant erosion of any kind of spiritual essence and anything really about what made Jesus so great, and instead going towards political allegiance that overshadows religious principles. So perhaps the future of Christianity is that it becomes so linked with conservatism that Jesus is just kind of used when they want to for political reasons, like not for helping the poor and the Beatitudes and any of that, but for returning as king to throw gay people and feminists in hell, and God is the celestial dictator that's going to vindicate them and fight for them in their political battles against the godless left. That's option two, that Christianity fails to be any kind of theological religion with any kind of valid spirituality and turns into a political religion with only a facade of theology that they use to support their political campaigns. So now we have option three, which is that Christianity getting into bed with Trump may give it more power in the short term, but it may be the nail in the coffin in the long term, because young people are now clearly seeing that when they go to church and are told that character matters, and then all of a sudden character doesn't seem to matter. They see the hypocrisy. They don't see Jesus or the divine or God in any of this. So while Christianity is clinging to power by going into politics, particularly under Jerry Falwell and that wing of Christianity, in the end, that may actually speed up Christian deconstruction and young people on TikTok seeing through Christianity's claim on Trump. And that may mean that in the long run, if you wanted to see Christianity in massive decline for the next 100 years, if your goal was that for whatever reason, Christianity claiming Trump may actually be the fastest way to get there, because they sold their religious soul and their moral high ground for this particular political leader. And the kids watched it happen happen on Protestant on TikTok, and the rate of nuns and the unaffiliated may increase over time. We know that's already happening with young women. So my prediction is more the latter of the two. The people who I know who are the best kinds of Christians, the ones who wake up in the morning and say, how can I be more expansive in love, in love today? How can I be more like Jesus? I see them getting kicked out of their churches or excommunicated or getting into trouble. My doctorate professor is a good example of that. He has one of the most beautiful faiths in God that I've ever seen, like very loving. And he was excommunicated last month from the Church of the Nazarene for his acceptance of queer people. So the best kinds of Christians I know, the ones who really, I think, embody Christ, who say, I love Jesus, but maybe I don't have a church right now, or I'm struggling with some of this. They're the ones who are having a hard time in church. And I see that happening, but I'm not seeing it yet kind of consolidate into a new movement of revival. I see more of the second and third route, that Christianity becomes this system in America where the men are more conservative, the women are more liberal, Christians are on the political right, atheists are on the political left, and the battles that we have with gender issues and religion are kind of played out in this political sphere. And the kids watching this being turned off by Christianity's claim that it is the moral influence of good in the world, or the backbone of America. Because if Christianity as a religion, which it has a history of doing, not only doesn't stop demagogues from taking power, it actually helps that to happen and primes people's brains for that to happen, then it can't stand on the moral high ground that it claims to. So the thing, though, that is most concerning for me right now, as someone who votes independent, and in this election there are various offices where I voted red, there are some where I voted blue. The thing that concerns me most about what's going on right now is this statistic that says that half of Americans think that the other half is fundamentally evil. If there's one thing that I'm passionate for right now, it's fighting for our shared humanity. The reasons that people are driven to vote are because of human reasons that you can understand. I felt like I voted for my children when I voted for Kamala Harris. But my Trumpy brother also felt like he was voting for his children. When we feel scared or threatened, we often in human nature latch on to the biggest bully in the playground. We do this theologically. When we're threatened, we want war gods and powerful gods fighting on our side. And we do this politically when we're in a state of chaos and people feel like they can't eat, or they feel like their identity is threatened. That's what draws us into authoritarianism and fascism. So my brother, my Christian Trump supporting brother, feels like his way of life is being threatened. He's scared of the excesses of the left, and there are excesses of the left, and he's scared of what that means for his children. He maybe doesn't see Trump as the perfect Christian, but he sees Trump as defending Christianity against what he sees as the godless, blue-haired left that is limiting, free speech and destroying nuclear families. Now, do I necessarily see it that way? No, but I can see his whole line of reasoning, and the feelings that he is feeling is human. He's not a fundamentally different human than me. It's how humans act when they feel threatened and scared. So even though I'm about to go to Thanksgiving tomorrow with a room full of people who voted for Trump and I did not, I don't see the world the way they do, there will still be moments of human to human connection underneath belief and underneath politics. And I'll continue to fight for that, because everything we do on both sides of the political aisle is very human. And if I just write off my entire family and half of America as fundamentally evil, then we start being able to treat people as less human. And when the other side is less human than me, when we make that move, that's when we can do violence to each other. That is the first move of violence, that the conversation ends and the other side isn't human. So I'm not going to do that. And if politics comes up, I'm going to use common ground language in order to kind of dial down people's ego response and defensive response, and try to be able to connect with people. That tends to go over better when I have a relationship with these people, so that they can't demonize me so easily. And because, I'm a human right in front of them. So I may say, yeah, I was raised Christian and I was taught that character always matters. And I still hold on to that belief, which is why I voted against Trump. Instead of saying anyone who voted for Trump is fundamentally evil or stupid or vice versa. Anyone who voted for Kamala is fundamentally evil or stupid. That's just not going to go anywhere except it make it easier for us to other the other, and then the conversation ends. So there are political values that we need on both the left and the right. There are in our theologies, our theology often leans left or right based on what religion you're from. And they're really two sides of the same coin. If you don't think that there's anything of value on the other side, then you're in the cult of your side. So the difference with this election, though, is that we can be friends with people who have different political values. But for this election, what makes it different is that there's certain things that were deal breakers, like, for example, sexual assault. And so if you're in a more intimate friendship or relationship and that was a deal breaker for you and it wasn't a deal breaker for them, now you have a moral difference. And it's going to take some conversation and negotiation to figure out why this was a deal breaker for you and it wasn't a deal breaker for that person. This is why women are asking on dates, who did you vote for? And the men are saying all kinds of things to try to not say Trump, because women are essentially asking for your moral hierarchy. Is sexual assault a deal breaker for you? And if the answer is no, they're deciding that that's not compatible with their moral framework. And so it's interesting that with Christianity, because it's claiming to be the moral backbone of America, that we're a Christian nation, it also is essentially saying that loyalty to a political side in this scenario is more important than moral character or family values. And that is why Christianity as a moral influence for good is a harder sell, because it began to sell its soul as it got into politics 50 years ago. But with Trump, certainly it's a very visible hypocrisy of what we know historical Jesus would have said about someone like Trump. And so that's something different about this election that we didn't have when it was, Romney versus Obama, for example. So another question that I've been asked to this week is how I stay grounded, because I've had a lot of clients that are just absolutely spiraling or feel like giving up, after this election and feeling some post-election blues. And this is one of the benefits of being a nihilist. When you don't maybe have specific goals for where you think humanity is going to be, and you also don't believe in free will, then essentially everyone acted in this scenario how I expected them to act. Christians, people who have authoritarian religion, acted exactly how I would expect them to act. Women, especially white women who historically, give their power for proximity to power, acted exactly how I expected them to act. And Black churches acted exactly as I expected them. Like everybody acted, like if you put in all the data, everybody acted exactly as how you would expect people would act. And so what you can then do is really check in. This is a great time post-election to check in with your meaning and purpose. Because if your meaning and purpose is built on grandiose ideas about the world becoming different than what it is, then you may become significantly disappointed all the time. And so for me, because my meaning and purpose is so laser focused on projects and people that I find meaningful, no matter what is going on in the world, then am I excited that Trump won? No, but am I okay? Yeah, I'm okay, because here's the thing, even if a comet was going to hit the Earth a month from now, I am so laser focused on a life that is built on meaning and has value at the level of experience for me, that my life essentially wouldn't change. And so that is one of the benefits about intentionally building a life on your meaning and purpose. And this is something that John Vervaeke says is when we're checking in with your meaning and purpose, the question to ask yourself, it's not these goals, it's not these lofty goals or these ideas of utopia. Maybe we'll never be able to do that. Maybe we'll never be able to transcend what humans are evolutionarily. The question that you ask yourself is, what matters in this world, even if I don't, even if I'm not here, what still matters in this world? And for me, helping people deconstruct from religion and find tools in nihilism to build lives of meaning that can stand up to the harsh truths of reality, like that means something to me, even if I wasn't here, even if I know that the universe doesn't care. Like my moment with that client still mattered. It was still meaningful. And so because I'm so laser focused on that. Oh, and then John Vervaeke's second question is, how much do you matter to that thing? And so for me, because my job is so focused on what I want to be doing and the conversations that I want to have and the ways that I can help people as a wounded healer, because these are the places that I got hurt or I got stuck to. And these are the people, these are the experiences, these are the relationships that I want to have with my children. I'm so focused and intentional about building the game that I kind of want to play here, that you know comets and the universe not knowing that we're here, and elections and humans doing what you expect them to do, doesn't send me into a spiral. And so that is actually one of the benefits of building your life from the ground up, instead of like stories or the supernatural or whatever, top down, is it gives you a lot of emotional resilience in times where you feel like the world is in chaos. So uh, the election didn't go the way that I was hoping, but I'm going to still keep doing what I do here at No Nonsense Spirituality, helping people find resources to build lives of intention and meaning and purpose and community and love and awe and transcendence, with as little dogma, with as little faith in the unbelievable as needed, and as little nonsense as possible. So subscribe here for more. I think next week I'm going to do a movie on why I hate the Polar Express. So that is coming next week. So stay tuned for that. And if you listened all the way to the end, thanks. I know this is a hot topic, so I'm curious to see what you guys think in the comments. Okay, bye.